The only thing necessary for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing. It's important that people wake up to what is going on. It's time that we read the Constitution. It is error that needs the support of government. Truth can stand alone. That was given to us by Thomas Jefferson. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. My name is Daniel Hapney, and this is The Real Story. I always try to tell people follow the money, but tonight I got kind of a, I want to say a police show. So hopefully all you policemen, specifically even Sharon policemen, are watching this show because, you know, there's like everything else, there's two sides to every sword. So what I'm going to do, we're going to cover some news, then we're going to throw in some, what we see changing, you know, in the country. Not so much here in Sharon, but in other locations of the country, and trying to tie it all together. So anyway, with news stuff, and yeah, don't want you to believe me. I want you to do your own due diligence, find out for yourself. Maybe now and then I'll throw some homework at you. That's if Matt's viewing. And what we'll do is we'll try to, we're going to go over some news. So here's some news for you. And this is in the United States, the misnamed Financial Reform Bill. I think it's rather interesting. Once again, who's writing it? This is like the healthcare bill where the insurance industry and the pharmaceutical industry wrote the bill. Okay, and of course you found very interesting stuff like the Internal Revenue Service was in the healthcare bill. Well, the Financial Reform Bill, it allows the Federal Reserve to take over a firm, fire its executives, you gotta like that, okay, and use taxpayer money to keep the company from going bankrupt. In other words, keep a failing business failing. And why that's interesting is because they said, oh, this financial reform bill, this is gonna get rid of the too big to fail. And it turns out what? Those globalist banksters, those Goldman Sachs guys or whatever, are now going to be able to take over any business they want, do it with your grandchildren's money, even if you're against it. So, too big to fail? Kind of, you know, doesn't sound that way. Oh, and by the way, this is all done without the input of Congress. But I know you don't want to believe me, so here you go. Check it out for yourself. Do your own due diligence. Okay, here's one for you. UN World Health Organization warns about fraud and corruption within the pharmaceutical industry. Like, I guess I don't remember them with the pandemic hype. Yes, how many countries bought how much swine flu vaccine? How much do we have left? And how I feel for those people that took it over here. We'll get into, you know, how it hurt people in Poland. That's a different story. Okay. Here's some global governance, because you may not think that there's, you know, a global government coming, but the head of the European Central Bank delivers a speech at the CFR, which is the Council on Foreign Relations, okay, started by Rockefeller. That's right. Know the banker who starts this, okay? Anyway, at the meeting, he calls for global governance led by the Bank of International Settlements in Switzerland, which is to become the central bank of the world. Well, isn't it our central bank that put us in the predicament we're in now? Who made all those low interest rates? Who made it easy so the bank can borrow money right now at 0%, yet you have to pay what when you borrow money? So yeah, they get to make that profit, I guess. Yeah. Thank you very much. Oh, they led that housing bubble. Oh, the dot-com bubble. Should I go through all the bubbles? Do you remember all the bubbles? Okay. All right. How's about, here's some news. This one I call Stalin-esque. And that is, in Canada, plans for the upcoming G20 summit. Remember the G20 was in Pittsburgh last time? That's where they dressed our police up and they brought in army and they put on, what, the Darth Vader uniforms, and they took their shields and they all stood in a row and beat their shields, right? Well, they're going to have a G20 summit meeting up in Toronto, and why it's interesting is they're going to have a free speech zone a couple miles down the street. So if you want to protest, you can be a couple miles away and do it. What does that mean? Does that mean that the area that the free speech zone's not in, you don't have free speech? Remember that when you get a permit to protest. So anyway, here's the U.S. By the way, you know, don't believe me. It's up there in the picture. Okay, U.S. federal agencies issue a report that says global warming, the convenient myth. Remember, you know, it's been disproven, but Sharon still teaches it in our school system. Don't get me going there. Could lead, this is important, this is a federal agency say, this could lead to increased cancer and mental illness. Don't you love that? Global warming now can cause earthquakes, global warming can cause mental illness, you know, and then when you find out, well, here, show them the picture. This is the Antarctic on the same day, about 10 years apart. Boy, there's more snow in 2010, huh? That may cause mental illness because you're over there thinking, wait a minute, we've just had the coldest, winter on record for the world. It snowed in London, it snowed in like Tel Aviv, it snowed in Saudi Arabia and stuff, but you're told it's global warming. You better get ready for those carbon taxes, huh? Oh, that's a globalist thing. There's no global thing going on. So anyway, it's rather interesting. I thought you'd like it, Don't believe me? Take a look at the pictures. How about this one? The Obama administration blocks a congressional subpoena. So Congress says to the, executive branch, we want this information. And it just happened to be about the Fort Hood shooting. Remember that? They wanted some documents. Well, the Pentagon and the Justice Department, you can't have that. Isn't that good when the executive branch tells Congress, the legislative branch, that they can't look at things? Why did this guy? Have you met him? Have you met Barry Soetoro? Excuse me. Have you met Barry Soetoro? What was his name when he re-entered the United States? Why was he traveling in the 80s on a Pakistani passport? What happens when you get adopted in another country? Do you give up your citizenship? Oh, and the question is, for all you people out there, and especially police and stuff, did you have to have a birth certificate to get your job, let alone your social security card? But Barry Soetoro didn't. Now, that's not me. This is the name he went to school with, What was the first thing he did when he got into the Oval Office? Barry Soetoro sealed all his records. I know, it's homework. Matt, for the rest of you viewers out there, find out who Barry Soetoro was and who he is now. Rather interesting, huh? I got to throw this up. What's the first thing he's going to do when he gets in the presidency? Yes!
I will promise you this, that if we have not gotten our troops out by the time I am president, it is the first thing I will do. I will get our troops home. We will bring an end to this war. You can take that to the bank.
Because you can believe him and he'll take it to the bank. He took your grandchildren and put them in slavery and basically, gave their money to the banksters. Anyway, some more news. Okay, the federal government, having failed to get control of the internet through the Federal Communications Commission, you love this, has quietly placed a provision into pending legislation for the financial overhaul. Rather interesting, huh? It gets good. That will give control of the internet to the Federal Trade Commission instead. Well, free internet advocates aren't loving it. I know, you don't believe me. Find out for yourself. Maybe it's time for you men to wake up. And become men again. Okay, U.S. Congressman Harry Waxman inserts a provision into the Wall Street financial reform bill. Aren't they slipping all sorts of nice things in here, okay? That will restrict the use of vitamin supplements. Well, that sounds like Wall Street financial reform to me, doesn't it to you? Yeah, it's like the healthcare. Didn't Hitler have a healthcare program where they limited care and they took crazy people off the streets, huh? And then they said, well, those people don't deserve to procreate. Well, it won't get, it's just, does history repeat itself? Do you ever watch the show? Anyway, here's the U.S. The newspaper circulation falls another 8.7%. Let's just call it 9%, okay? In the last 6 months, as readers continue to migrate to free internet news sources, such as unfiltered news. The top 25 newspapers had significant losses. The other reason may be that maybe they're tired of the lies. Like for you readers of the Boston Globe, owned by the New York Times, do the stories ever change? Look at the lie they sold you about the terrorist bomb thing in New York City with the car. You realize when it's real terrorism, they keep it hush-hush. But when it's the phony, staged, false flag terrorism done by criminals in our government, it's got to be on the news every minute. Like Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire, the underwear bomber. Yeah, who the State Department led on the plane without a passport. We'll get into that, towards the end of the show. All right, so anyway, American and Russian scientists, this is big, okay, have discovered that hamsters fed genetically modified food have serious health impairment in the second generation and by the third generation are unable to procreate. What I just said was scientists have been studying what happens to animals when they eat genetically modified organisms. Like soy nowadays. All your soys, 95% of it's GMO soy. What's important is Monsanto, you've heard of them before, right? They're the good folks at Monsanto. Remember the revolving door at the FDA? You get a job at Monsanto, then you go work for the FDA, then you approve Monsanto stuff, then you go back to work for Monsanto, get a big salary increase, then you go back to the work to the FDA, then you approve more Monsanto stuff. The revolving door, just like at the FDA, you know. Should I talk about the pharmaceutical industry? But it's interesting because, you know, they said they were going to end hunger. Well, if there's no people, you know, if your grandchildren can't reproduce, I guess you don't have to worry about grandchildren being hungry, or great-grandchildren for that matter.